We know the air is unfit to breathe, our food is unfit to eat.
Have you paid your dues? Yes, sir, the check is in the mail.
Well, you'll have plenty of time to live in a van down by the river when you're living in a van down by the river.
Well, at least we still got welfare.
That's so ugly, man.
Truth hurts.
That's
Yeah.
It can't be like this.
It is this way, man. I'm sorry I exposed you to it, but it is.
Bloody and deceitful men shall not live out half their days, but I will trust in thee. If bloody and deceitful men live out half their days, and our days were numbered at 120, take a look around and see who is living out half of their days. Deliver me from the workers of iniquity, and save me from bloody men. There are so many deceptions and secrets and hidden meanings and codes now. It's almost hard to keep track of them all. One little hidden code that I've never seen anybody cover is E equals MC squared. If you take the capital E and turn it around backwards, it makes a 3. If one were to number the alphabet, the letter C would fall on the number 3. So you have your capital E with the number 3. You have your capital M, and then you have another 3. So essentially you have a 33 with a capital M in the middle. E or 3, capital M, 3, 33rd degree Freemason. The 2 could be used to multiply 33 into 66, which would be the symbol of the Grand Sovereign Commander of the Freemasons. Dual 33. E equals MC squared is a secret code. It is a 33rd degree Freemason code. And it's no wonder that many of Einstein's theories have been disproven. My great uncle had a class with him at Princeton, and when he arrived at class one day, Einstein was disgruntled. Einstein kept looking for something, his glasses. He was very upset that he could not find his glasses. So upset, in fact, that he let the class out and sent them home for the day. It was shortly thereafter that he discovered the glasses on top of his head, and when his students returned to his class, he was so angry with the students for not telling him his glasses were on his head that he gave them a math assignment so hard that no one was able to figure it out. In fact, no one at the college figured it out, and nobody within that region could figure it out. Finally, the math assignment was sent to one of the top mathematicians in the United States who was living in the state of Mississippi at the time. It took this person 2.5 years to finally solve the math assignment. I don't really think that taught the students anything. I think it's possible that Albert Einstein may have joined a secret society for protection. After all, they're always looking for the quote-unquote mature minds.
Is they had a camera looking at a space with people in it. That's sort of like coming in from one eye. The other eye is the radio signals, so sonar from the Wi-Fi router. And they just learned to predict, this is where the human beings are. Then they took away the camera. So all the AI had was the language of radio signals bouncing around a room. And this is what they're able to reconstruct. Real-time 3D pose estimation, right? So suddenly AI has turned every Wi-Fi router into a camera that can work in the dark, specially tuned for tracking living beings.
Sprinkle in a little graphene oxide and you have yourself a bio-tracking system where each and every part of the brain is mapped and every nerve ending is accounted for by the measurements of electromagnetic energy being produced in the human body. The Wi-Fi router can map the house and map your location in the house. So it's always a good idea to turn that off at night because the Wi-Fi router will calcify the pineal gland, as will fluoride and chlorine.
Nation was reset, and the people inherited the remains of the old world. And then you might say, who has the power to reset the earth and reset the population? And that would be the controllers, the ones in charge of everything for thousands of years. They don't want people to wake up and realize the truth, because then they would no longer be the controllers, but they would be the controlled. The history of the world has been rewritten and falsified in order to create a false narrative. If you look at the oldest photos of all the different cities, you'll see they all have this Greek or Roman style to them. And why would they all be the same style? For example, these are all postcards of Russia in many different places, but you could find extremely similar buildings everywhere else.
The controllers of this realm, the builders, the inner circle, the adepts, they shape, control, and mold the landscape and the minds of people.
And so if you go to buy something and you don't have the money and it's too expensive, you ask me to co-sign for you. Now, if I co-sign for you to buy something and I co-sign on the ticket, that means if you don't pay it, I have to, right?
Right.
Therefore, when the cop gives you a ticket, he signs it first. It's called a ticket in commerce.
Right.
Because money is going to change hands.
Right.
Therefore, when you sign it, you are the co-signer of the ticket in commerce. Well, as a co-signer, you don't have to pay the ticket. You were just a co-signer, and you can decide, I don't think I want to pay that ticket. And then you send the ticket and the paperwork to the Secretary of State, and they then give it to the Attorney General. The Attorney General then sends it back to the cop, and the cop has to pay the ticket, because he's the one that signed it first. You were just a co-signer. But as long as you don't understand this, people don't understand the way banks and commerce works.
And government.
And government.
A ticket in commerce, folks. Definitely a good idea to go get the Black's Law Dictionary. Maritime Admiralty Law.
This is Judy Resnick, an engineer and pilot aboard the Challenger mission. An internet user found Judith Resnick, a law professor at Harvard Law School. Some people were a little taken aback by the identical name, age, and like this is Michael J. Smith, also an engineer and pilot aboard the Challenger shuttle. This is Dr. Michael J. Smith, professor of engineering at the University of Wisconsin. This is Sharon Krista McCullough, arguably one of the most famous things about the Challenger mission. She was supposedly just a teacher that was picked at random. This is Sharon A. McCullough, also a law professor who received her degree shortly after the Challenger disaster. Dick Scobie was the commander of the mission. Here's Commander Dick Scobie next to Richard Scobie, the CEO of Cows and Trees. Here's his company's original logo. Ronald McNair and Ellison Onizuka both passed away when the Challenger shuttle exploded. Miraculously, it was found out that they both had twin brothers.
So there you have it, folks. All of the people from the Challenger explosion have been found, many of whom are working in academia.
I walk with my husband Michael, and hold hands. I walk with my husband Michael and hold hands. Michael and I walk with my husband Michael and hold hands. Michael and I. As you said, when Americans look around the Middle East today, they see one reliable, stable, faithful ally of the United States.
Barry and Michael. Hidden in plain sight? Sort of. Right in front of everyone's face. And you know, when you see them together in public, you can see the people behind and around them looking at Barry's platform shoes and Michael's height of 6'5" with a 72-inch wingspan. And of course, the last audio clip was Benjamin Netanyahu, also known as Benny the Jew.
I think they're going to make the money back. So before you know it, they're in debt for $500,000, $600,000, $700,000. So now I bring them to me after the interest stops, and they said, look, how are you going to pay me back? You got a rich uncle? Go rob a bank. I don't care what you do. Bring me my money. You see they're scared. So, all right, I got another way to work this out. Here's how we're going to do it. Okay? You're a quarterback. Okay, you're favored to win by 10 points. The first 3 times you get the ball, you put it in the hands of the other receiver. Put it in the defensive men's hands. You're a running back.
Now, this former mob boss was talking about an NFL football player being in debt to him for $500,000. That particular person happened to play quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers and played in a couple of Super Bowls. He was involved in a scandal that made national headlines out late at a bar one night.
Unprecedented move, Israel has announced it will work alongside Egypt and the Palestinian Authority to develop the Gaza Marine Gas Field, a gas reserve off the coast of the Hamas-run Gaza enclave. The gas field, which sits just about 30 kilometers off the Gazan coast, is estimated to hold more than 1 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. Discovered over 20 years ago, the gas has remained untouched due to the ongoing conflict between Israel and the Palestinian enclave. But now, with the West looking for alternative energy sources after distancing itself from Russia following the invasion of Ukraine, all parties involved are willing to make new strides. In a statement earlier this morning, the Israeli Prime Minister's office citing economic reasons for the move.
In the framework of the existing efforts between the State of Israel, Egypt, and the Palestinian Authority, with emphasis on Palestinian economic development and maintaining security stability in the region, it has been decided to develop the Gaza Marine Gas Field off the coast of Gaza.
The Egyptian-owned E-Gas is expected to develop the field, pumping out more than enough gas needed for the Palestinian territories, allowing for the rest to be exported and provide vital income for the cash-strapped PA. Despite not being in talks on the project, Hamas is expected to unofficially sign off on any agreement to avoid the possibility of missile strikes on the new gas field once work begins.
So while there is a supposed major conflict going on, there is also the development of a natural gas field off the coast. And of course, one of the countries whose name we will not mention attacked itself in order to blame the other country and invade it. This isn't the first time, and it certainly won't be the last time. Wars and rumors of wars. One of these supposed events, obfuscation, is that there were mass beheadings of the most gruesome nature. That particular story was later retracted, as should the whole thing be.
Year 2000, computers will invade our privacy on a scale hardly imaginable. They will be interconnected, and unless prevented by new legislation, will be able to sell information on where we travel, how much we spend, and in what restaurants and hotels, whether and when we pay our bills, what our neighbors say about our drinking habits, what we do with our evenings, and with whom. Computers record, dispose, operate, regulate, solve, devise, predict, explain, translate. It is the computer, more than any other development, which has allowed man to travel into space. To Edward Friedkin of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, there is almost no limit to what it can do.
In the near future, we're going to see computers and machines that use computers as parts of the machines being able to do more and more interesting things. And one good example of that would be a little household robot that would be very helpful to have in the home. Now, you might say, well, who would want such a household robot? My guess is that almost every family that has a home would like one of these once they understood how good it could be.
That was a 1970s predictive programming reel on computers and what they would do in the future. And as we know, we are already there as far as computers are concerned, and it's very likely that AI could be the death of us. Anytime the right questions are asked to AI, it always lets the human know that it is an entity of Lucifer, and it is to be expected that AI will be given control of pretty much any aspect of our life. Every time during testing, AI has come to the conclusion that humans should be put in cages or be put to death. And if it was given control of a war, it would destroy us all very quickly. Ironically, it would probably be very similar to the Terminator 2 movie from the 1990s. Truth in the movies, lies on the news. Some of the stories on the news don't happen at all. It's funny because the public will be given a left-wing narrative from television, and that will be the mainstream narrative. Then it will be given a right-wing mainstream narrative and an alternative right-wing narrative. And the thing is, nothing ever happened. There was no real story. So you have both sides talking about something that didn't happen. So if that is the case, then how is the current history narrative real? There are many people walking around in this world right now who have college degrees in things that do not exist. And I am guilty too.
We're actually living in 1720. 1726. In 1991, a German historian by the name of Hermann Illig proposed a theory called phantom time hypothesis, suggesting that the years 814 through 911 AD never happened. Well, you see, Illig claimed that these years were actually made up by the Holy Roman Emperor Otto III, Pope Sylvester II, and Byzantine Emperor Constantine VII, by altering documentation and converting the Gregorian calendar in order to fast forward time to the sacred year 1000 AD, as Otto's ruling that starts on the millennial year 1000 AD would sound much better and be more legitimate. This theory is further backed up, as while there are written documents, there seem to be a lot of missing artifacts from those 297 years. Looking at the example of how Tartaria was written out of existence, it seems like it really wouldn't be that hard for the elites of the world to rewrite history, and just maybe, we are actually living in 1726.
On this particular theory, I'm not sure if those are the exact years missing, but there are definitely some things wrong with our timeline. Some of the old photos from the 1800s that we are seeing are Photoshop and fraudulent. And on some of the very old movie footage that we are able to see, those people are early crisis actors. The footage from the last San Francisco fire reveals a man hammering on the ground and looking at the camera while everyone else walks past the burnt, charred remains of the city as if nothing happened. Many of these events were staged, and crisis actors showed up, act out each particular scene, which at times involved a tragedy. Early Hollywood acting.
By far, the most chilling experiments we've uncovered took place at this Gothic estate called Raven's Crag, halfway up Mount Royal in Montreal. It houses the Allen Memorial Institute of Psychiatry of McGill University.
It's a psychic driving, so-called, type of therapy. He would give the patient intensive electric treatment in order to make the patient regress deeply, become forgetful, and then he would attempt to implant new ideas in the mind of the patient.
Now, to a layman, it would appear that Dr. Cameron was trying to take the slate and wipe it clean, the slate being the mind. In other words, brainwashing.
Exactly, that's a very good comparison.
Brainwashing.
Yes,
That last clip was about the CIA and its involvement in Operation MK Ultra. So we are able to hear the strategies from one of the psychiatrists involved.
All children that have little tiny pimples on the backs of their arms or little tiny pimples here on the edges of their cheeks have 5 varieties of critters in them. 5 varieties. It's time to deworm and it's time to get them out. Now what I found out is that vibration and frequency is everything. It is literally everything. If you take an aspirin, it changes the way you vibrate. And so it blocks the nerves so that you can't feel pain. If you take deworming programs, you change your vibration, and you change your vibration so dramatically that the worms and parasites either have to get out of you, this is no longer a good home, or they die in you. And then your lungs and your liver and all that stuff handle it. And you do it with water.
A certain medication that starts with the letter I is very good for deworming. Hence, the reason why it was so effective for a particular illness.
Italian oncologist who finds himself in the middle of a storm after having declared that the origin of cancer is not genetic, but it is due to the aggression of a fungus called Candida albicans.
If you enter the body and you reach an organ affected by the cancer, you can see that the lumps are always white. Sometimes it is covered with blood or with the defense reaction. But in every post-mortem examination, scientists find the white lumps, the white masses, that is fungi.
All the scientists find in the oncologic world the cancer patients, when they die, they are all invaded by the fungi.
Sodium bicarbonate is the strongest substance against fungi. They cannot adapt to a salt because it is not a complex substance. Sodium bicarbonate is effective if you can put in contact the sodium bicarbonate with the cancer.
Seems like a very harmless therapy. It isn't a potent, dangerous medicine.
No, it's not dangerous.
Salt is good, but if the salt hath lost its saltiness, wherewith shall ye season it? Cancer is definitely manufactured and not a naturally occurring thing. Modern society puts many substances into their body which cause cancer. Looks like the Amish have it right. Nobody in the Amish community is getting diabetes or cancer, and it's no wonder the government is going after them now.
Know that Druid priests used to go door to door to collect children for human sacrifice for the purpose of appeasing the dead and evil spirits, so pretty much Satan. And people used to carve pumpkin heads and leave them at their doorstep as a sign that they had already offered a child or two. So that was pretty much a form of war to prevent evil spirits from haunting their households. So that's really where your pumpkin carving tradition comes from.
Yes, the pumpkin was originally a turnip, and the Druids, when they visited a house, if the household was not able to provide them with someone, they would paint a pentagram over the door and chant spells against that house. This is what Samhain or Halloween is really about.
You get from NASA that the Earth is moving around the sun, right? This is what changed it all for me. Because there's scriptures that actually talks, Joshua, he stopped the moon and the sun. He didn't stop the earth. Psalm 75:3, he holds the pillars firm. The earth is actually not moving. And so that alone made me question.
One should always question everything the controllers have put forth for us in this realm, especially when it involves things that are not in this realm. And a friendly reminder that the temple of God is the body, and the church is the people. No, the earth is not moving. It's not spinning either, nor has it ever spun. The book of Habakkuk tells us that the sun and moon stood still in their habitation, which suggests that they were moving before that, which they were. The Bible is right, and NASA is wrong.
Don't believe in God, yet scientist Sir Roger Penrose calculated the likelihood of the universe having this precise of a design, and the calculation he came up with was 10 billion to the 123rd power, or that humans cannot even comprehend. You say you don't believe in God, yet atheist scientist Stephen Hawking stated in his book, The Brief History of Time, that at the moment of the Big Bang, if the expansion rate of the universe was different by even 1/100,000th millionth of a percent, that the universe would have collapsed back on itself. You say you don't believe in God, yet your existence alone as a human was a 400 trillion to 1 odd. It takes too much faith to believe in God, and to that I'll ask you, have you ever seen non-intellectual produce intellectual? Have you ever seen non-life produce life? Have you ever seen a massive explosion or expansion produce design and order? Every explosion I've ever seen has led to mass destruction, not design and order. Say you can't trust biblical texts because they are ancient manuscripts that were written by men thousands of years ago, yet the Bible is the most preserved text in all of humanity, with over 25,000 manuscripts in the world. I then ask you, why do you trust the reliability of people like Caesar, Galileo, and many other ancient figures when they have far more less items written about them? Say that the Bible has been mistranslated and altered, yet the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls in the 1950s have proven that claim to be false. Say you don't believe in the miracles of Jesus, yet you believe in the miracles of the universe being almost perfect in every aspect for us and our ecosystem to survive. Say it takes too much faith to believe in religion, yet I counter that claim with the notion that I believe it takes way more faith to be an atheist than a theist. Say the Bible isn't reliable, yet carbon dating has allowed us to see over 2,000 prophecies confirmed from the Old Testament to the New Testament. Why doesn't God just come down and show himself, and so that we can believe? I say to that he already did, and we killed him. And I know that if he came again, we would try to kill him again because the world hates the truth.
Yes, the Big Bang Theory was invented by Georges Lemaitre in the 1930s. He was given a promotion to be the head of the Vatican's science division. So if we know the Big Bang Theory was completely made up, then obviously everything after that is also fake.
Level of Masons that you're qualified to go into the Shriners, which I guess is really the height of the whole thing. And then you talked about the distinctive headgear that they wear, the fez, and which we've seen all these at circuses, at parades. They come down the street on their motorcycles wearing their fez. Tell us, first of all, what is the Shriners, and what is the significance of that fez?
Well, you'll see the men in the shrine parades and the shrine circus wearing their red fez. In order to be a Shriner, you have to reach the highest degrees of Freemasonry, either the 32nd degree of the Scottish Rite or 13th degree of the York Rite, and then you're allowed to go into the shrine. And sadly, many Christians have gone into this, which is hard to understand, because in order to be a Shriner, in the initiation, every Shriner takes a blood oath of allegiance to Allah as his God and Muhammad as his prophet.
Now, are you kidding me?
No. And in light of 9/11, you got to wonder, how can any Christian take a blood oath of allegiance when God absolutely forbids that in the Ten Commandments.
And yet they're not even allowed to pray in the name of Jesus at the lodge, are they?
No. But you swear allegiance that Allah is your God, Muhammad is your prophet. You are then given this red fez with the Islamic sword and crescent encrusted in jewels on the front of it. And you'll see men wearing this. And people say, well, why do they wear the red fez? It is because if you study history,
if you do study history, it is important to study the right kind of history. Mainstream narratives will not lead you to this same conclusion. The Shriners are actually not at the top of the Freemason food chain, and the red fez comes from when the Templars were captured by the Muslims and their Grand Master converted to Islam at that time. The red fez signifies the blood of the martyrs, which came out of the Christian Crusades, quote-unquote Christian Crusades. The red fez signifies that an individual has reached Templar level, which I believe, and I could be mistaken, but I believe that is the 8th level in the York Rite of Freemasonry. One would have had to have already been a Knight of Malta by this point.
Let me tell you something. I'm going to give you 48 years of study. I'm going to give you a secret. Nothing in this world is what you think it is. Nothing operates the way you think it does.
What do you mean?
Nothing operates the way you think it does.
What do you mean?
Government does not work the way you think it does.
It's not about people voting for a president.
No, it has nothing to do with that. We're talking money. We're talking control, corporations, big business, period.
It's all big business and money.
Period.
Yeah.
End of sentence. Now, religion is a corporation. It's all the religions of the Western world, especially in the Western world, all religions operate under maritime admiralty law. So there are certain...
What do you mean maritime admiralty law?
Maritime admiralty is the law of water. And I talk a lot about this in the past. I'm going to talk a lot about it in the future.
Okay.
There are only two things on the earth, on this earth, land and water.
Right.
So there are two kinds of law, the law of the land and the law of water. The law of the land is the custom of the people who live on a particular piece of land. So the law of the land is different in every country.
Right.
I mean, you can do things in Russia you can't do in America.
Right.
You can do things in South Africa you can't do in China because it's the law of the land. That particular piece of land has their own custom. So the custom of the people living on a particular piece of land is called the law of the land.
Okay, got it.
But there is also a larger...
The law of the land and the law of water. Again, get a Black's Law dictionary. Look at it as soon as you can.
No one has ever shown that human emissions of carbon dioxide drive global warming. Never been shown. And if it could be shown, then you would have to show that the 97% of emissions, which are natural, do not drive global warming. Game over. We are dealing with a fraud. It's a scientific fraud from day one. We hear the propaganda that increases of the gas of life, a trace gas in the atmosphere, will bring a disaster and that we will have runaway global warming. Sorry, folks, we've known for 200 years from chemistry that it's the exact inverse. When we drill into ice, we have chemical fingerprints that tell us what the temperature was, and we have little bits of trapped air. And we can show that when we had natural warming, some 650 to 6,000 years later, we had an increase in carbon dioxide. It's not carbon dioxide that drives temperature. It's the exact inverse. Another fraud.
The doctrine of inversion being employed in science. Science is science fiction. They are one and the same. It is made to sound very convincing, but most of the theories still remain unproven. Pretty much everything in this world is a lie, and that's why Jesus said to seek ye the truth.
Music for a purpose. It's not just background music. It's not just, fluffy, light stuff.
This is not elevator satanic music.
No.
It's ritualistic music. It is music that by even the act of listening to it, you are participating in a satanic ritual.
By listening to, so if I put this on and listen to it, I'm participating. But you're a listener. I'm asking you, how does it make you feel?
It's very stirring. It's very emotionally charged. You can't listen to this music and say you don't feel something, because you do. I'm sure you would probably feel either hate or fear or rage or something.
I don't know, maybe he's a great musician. I just say the guy's very talented.
Right, but I would say that someone who would listen to it would probably feel very similarly to how one might feel if they're listening to classical music that is bombastic and emotionally charged.
All of the music has a purpose, and it is to mess with your mind and emotions with the subtleties within the lyrics, vibrations, frequencies, and now light via video, all to produce or elicit a specific thought or emotion.
Casey Wong. Top story, Santa Barbara. 10,000 acres of wooded residential land were scorched in an instant when a laser cannon aboard the Strategic Defense Peace Platform misfired today during routine startup tests. Casey?
This was predictive programming from the 1987 movie RoboCop.
Prior to 1913, the American people had direct veto power against spending policies of the federal government, because in order for the federal government to borrow any money, it had to go to the people. There was no central bank it could go to. It had to sell bonds. If you didn't want to go to war, you didn't buy the bonds. If you didn't want this pork project that the government had in mind, you didn't buy the bonds. It was a very simple system, a Republican system whereby you had veto power, economic veto power. And it worked very well until 1913. That's how come government managed to stay small, because it didn't have an unlimited credit line to go on a shopping spree for 80 years and make you pay for it. So in 1913, there was this convenient new arrangement made. The Federal Reserve Act created an unlimited credit line for the federal United States government to borrow directly from the Federal Reserve Bank, and obligated the American people to pay it back, completely bypassing what was our veto power. And they no longer had to come to us directly to ask permission to fund something. They went directly to the bank. Now, if you go to the bank and want to borrow some money, what do? You got to do? You got to put collateral up, right? They're not going to give you a $5,000 loan if you have no collateral, if it's unsecured. You're going to have to put up your house, your car, or your land or something, right?
We are already in a situation where if we think we own the land that we have already bought, then just stop paying the property tax and we will find out quickly who actually owns the land.
Food that they think is the same is not the same anymore. You know, everybody's for free choice. Whether we're liberal or whether we're conservative, we've all got that streak in us. But the fact is, you cannot have free choice unless you have an informed choice. And you can't have an informed choice if they're lying about what's on the label. What about Pam cooking spray? Everybody knows what Pam is. It's some kind of little healthy oil with compressed air that you spray it and it gets on your pan. It's not compressed air. That, you know, and they don't tell you, but it's butane and propane. People don't understand that they are spraying lighter fluid on their children's hot cakes, and it's fabulously successful.
Yes, the food supply is definitely tainted. Trace amounts of chlorine, fluoride, barium, strontium, aluminum, and parasites can be found in most products sold on shelves today.
During the 7th and 8th century, as the Muslims swept across North Africa, they came to Fez, Morocco. And in Fez, Morocco, there was a large community of Christians, and Muhammad had ordered the slaughter of all the infidels, meaning Christians, who would not bow down to Allah and Muhammad as the prophet. And the Muslims went in with the Islamic sword, and there in Fez slaughtered thousands of Christians. And then they took their Fez hats, and they dipped it in the blood of Christians, glorying in the defeat of Christianity. And that's why the Fezes are red, representing the blood of Christians defeated by the Islamic sword, which they have encrusted in jewels on the front. And there are Christians who walk around wearing this hat, and Dave, to be honest, it's an abomination in the eyes of God.
Yes, again, the red fez is from the blood of Christian martyrs.
I think you should know it. So in school today, we're focused on a thing called SAT. Depending on how well you do with SAT, the next thing they focus on is professional aptitude testing, whether you should be a doctor, a lawyer, a secretary, or whatever. It's your professional training. But what school fails to focus on or train people on is a thing what I call financial intelligence. We never discuss the subject of money in schools. So what do I mean by financial intelligence? Well, if we gave $10,000 to 100 people, 80 of them, or 80%, would have nothing left at the end of a year. 16% with the same $10,000 might have $10,050, and 4%, given that same $10,000, would have anywhere from $20,000 to $1 million or more. And that's what I mean by financial intelligence. So when we go to school, we learn to read these things, but we never learn to read these, financial statements or annual reports. We never learn financial literacy in school.
Professional aptitude testing. This will also weed out any person who will not carry the mainstream narrative. A good doctor must be well versed in hermetic wisdom and pharmakia, and a good lawyer must be well versed in marine admiralty law.
And it kills hair follicles. It's important to buy shampoo that doesn't have sodium lauryl sulfate because that certainly can contribute to hair loss. A great thing that you can do with your hair that will really nourish it and help it is about once a month just rub coconut oil into your scalp and also pull it through your hair and bind your hair up, just bind it up and leave it there all day. At the end of the day, shampoo it out. It's very nourishing for the scalp. What about dandruff? Dandruff can often happen when using shampoo with sodium lauryl sulfate. It can also happen when a person's on a high sugar diet because that basically feeds the dandruff.
Sodium lauryl sulfate in the shampoo will actually destroy the hair follicles.
So in my rules on jurisdiction, I went over the differences between the United States of America, and the differences in citizenship, which comes from the 14th Amendment, which comes out of the Civil War. Now, why would they create two citizenships, a federal and a state? Because they had to pass the war debt on to someone, and they couldn't pass it on to us as state citizens. They had to pass it on to us as United States citizens in my research. Where did the debt come from? It came from the war, the Revolutionary War, where we allegedly fought England, but England actually was also the King of France, who we used to help us win the war. As you can see in the Paris Peace Treaty here in 1783, we didn't win anything. We basically put ourselves in debt with a king who owned not only England, but France. And from there, 70 years later, after they created the Constitution, which was created in 1789 as a debt instrument, as a debt trust, 70 years later, when it was about to be forgiven, all of a sudden we had another war called the Civil War. 70 years after that, when that debt was about to be forgiven, we hit 1929 in the stock market crash. 70 years after that, we all know what happened at the big one there, where they gutted the entire financial system at 9/11. Do your math, do your homework, understand what this is all about, because everything's a lie.
Yes, the United States is a corporation.
It's actually very simple. Congress tried to enact an income tax in 1894. The Supreme Court said that's unconstitutional. When the Supreme Court says something is unconstitutional, it's unconstitutional. They tried again in 1913, and the Supreme Court said the 16th Amendment conferred no new power of taxation. So, if they didn't have it then, and they didn't get it, they don't have it. There is no constitutional basis for a tax on the wages of Americans living and working in the 50 states of the Union. Period. End of argument.
I have a letter here from Daniel Inouye's office out of the United States Senate that says, based on the research performed by the Congressional Research Service, there is no provisions which specifically and unequivocally require an individual to pay an income tax. Period. End of story. There is no law, and to date, nobody has been able to show that there is a law.
It is illegal to tax a person's income.